Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I wanted to spotlight another game launcher app for Android called Beacon Game Launcher, as I've seen it talked about quite a bit in comparison to Daigisho and Emulation Station, which are two of the more popular launchers for Android right now. This app is available from the Google Play Store directly for $2.99 US. It has Android app support, and it can be set as your home launcher as well. A big feature here is that you can scrape from Steam Grid DB if you like, but there's other options too. It's a very minimalistic style launcher, and it's not really that difficult to set up or to use. I like the simplicity of it, and I think a lot of users will gravitate towards that when they just see how it doesn't feel invasive and it doesn't feel like it's resource intensive. It just feels very minimalistic and easy to load your games. Between all three launchers, this is definitely the one with less features, but it's also less bloat and it feels like less resources. Once you purchase and install it from the Play Store, you can open it and you'll see a very similar screen to Daigisho, where it just wants you to add the platforms and the games that you have, so let's just do that now. Starting with Android games, you'll get an option to mark any Android games that you have and that you want. I actually don't have any installed right now, but I'm going to click Moonlight and XP Play just to show you what happens if you did. Now you can use the shoulder buttons to move to Android at the top, and you can now see both apps. And it seems to think that Moonlight is Moonlighter. Moonlighter is a pretty good game, but obviously not the same thing. But you get the idea. The idea here is you want to use this for all of your Android games. Now, if you want to access your Android apps, which includes everything and will include games as well, you can see the shortcut at the bottom is B for apps. And you can now see all of your apps, and the setting cog at the top right will take you to Android settings. So it's a good way to separate your apps and your games. If you push Y for settings, you can see platforms that were added. So right now we just have Android, and if you click it and edit it, you can add more games if you like. Since I personally don't have any Android games installed right now, I'm just going to remove it and we'll add some other platforms. So let's go ahead and add some emulator game platforms. And this section is going to assume that you have emulators and ROMs already on your device. But if not, I'll leave a link in the description to setup guides for both of those things. I'm going to start with Nintendo Game Boy Advance. And then for Player App, we have to tell Beacon which app we use to play Game Boy Advance games. And so for me, that would be RetroArch, and for most people it would likely be RetroArch. And then we have to tell it which core that we're going to use in RetroArch to play our Game Boy Advance games. And I know that I have the MGBA core installed, and that's what I use for Game Boy Advance games in RetroArch, and that's what I want Beacon to launch. Lastly, we need to tell Beacon where our Game Boy Advance games are. So find and select your GBA ROMs folder, wherever it is. Mine is actually on the SD card, in a ROMs folder, and then in a GBA folder. Then you can just click Add Platform, and you should enable notifications if you get the pop-up. And if we move over to GBA, we can see all of our games, and our artwork is starting to populate as Beacon starts to scrape it. If you push select on a game, you can play, you can favorite, and you can edit. And by going into edit, you can adjust the box art, the metadata, and a lot more. You can also change the platform selected for that specific game. So you likely wouldn't do this for Game Boy Advance, but let's say a specific game runs better in a different emulator or core on another platform, you can do that per game change here. Back on the main screen here, if you click the cards on the bottom, you can change from gallery to list or grid. Personal preference on whatever you want. I'm personally going to be using list since that looks the best to me. If you push A on a game, it'll load the game. As long as you set up the right player app and core, it'll all work. If it doesn't, you didn't select the right player app or core or both. To exit the game and come back, it's whatever the hotkey you set up in the emulator. So for RetroArch and for me, I have it set as L3 plus start to exit. But each emulator is different and everybody's configuration is different depending on how you set it up. If you push Y to head back to settings, you can add more platforms using the plus icon in the bottom right. If we head to the Scraping tab, you can see the options that you have for scraping. Screenscraper.fr is the one that most of us use. You just need to create an account on their website and then add the account here to use it. Personally, I would suggest doing that. But you also have the option of Steam Grid DB. And it's the same idea, a lot of people love this one, and I would suggest using it as well if you'd like. More options doesn't hurt. In the Preferences tab, you can change a few things here, like the theme color and the background style. So, for example, if I change it to Azure, somebody's going to make fun of me for this one, and Game Screenshot, the colors on the main screen are now blue instead of green, and the background is the game screenshot. Feel free to find the right combination of colors and background and whatever you want to do. Same thing with the font as well. But there's a lot more settings if you scroll down, and it's pretty self-explanatory for all of them. There's even a Discord server in the feedback section if you run into problems. Now, to set Beacon as the home launcher so that when you start the device, it boots right into it, and when you push the home button on your device, it'll come right back. Let's head to Apps, and then the Setting cog top right. Scroll down to Apps, scroll to Default Apps, Default Home App, and change it to Beacon. Otherwise, that is basically it. Just go through, add your platforms, configure as you want, and enjoy using this awesome front end. I know there's a lot of you using Beacon, but for those that aren't, is this of any interest to you? I'm curious. I've been going back and forth between all three Android launchers now, Digisho, Beacon, and Emulation Station, and I still haven't really settled on one. And sometimes, like for the RG556, I use a combination of both of them. So I'm curious where your head is at. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.